Greetings and welcome to the Leap Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Christopher White, and on today's amazing show, we have an amazing guest from our community by the name of Monica. And she's a young lady that I've had the opportunity to meet on at least one or two occasions, and she has a wealth of knowledge that she's absolutely going to share with us today, and I'm looking forward to hearing all that she has to share. Primarily, we're going to talk about trauma and things around that line, as my last video was dealing with trauma and how that affects us and how it can be a lifelong process in healing those. So on today's show, having this amazing guest by the name of Monica. Monica, welcome.
Thank you so much, Chris. I'm excited to be here on the Leaf Lifestyle and dive into the conversation of wellness, trauma, and wherever else this may take us today. So I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Right. Well, I'd first like to thank you for having us here, for being here with us, and just, taking the time to kind of like share your experience and what you know with the community so that they can kind of benefit from that as well. So one of the first things I like to ask people is, how are you doing today? How's your day going? How is life treating you?
My day is going well. I have no complaints. I started my day off in the right frame of mind, taking care of my own mind, body, and spirit. So I feel really, really good today. How about you? You asked that, how are you feeling?
Me, I'm doing great. I'm thankful to be able to be in position to be able to kind of make these kind of shows and just share this information with people. But overall, I'm doing well. I'm blessed and highly favored. I feel that way. And so it's a great day. But I really wanted to kind of jump into the conversation and talk about some of your, like, how you came to understand about trauma and like how'd you get into the field of like working with people with traumas?
Absolutely. That's a great question. So for me, it starts, I think, back into just having my own lived experience.
Right.
Just growing up as a child who experienced certain forms of neglect, certain forms of trauma as a child, and growing up into a young adult and not really having the understanding or knowledge of knowing what that was, but still it was impacting me in my day-to-day life. And I was about 22 years old when I started working at Children's Center, working with young children who had actually experienced trauma, and a lot of them were living in these in housing there at Elmcrest. And I started building relationships, and I started learning more about the impacts of trauma. I started having conversations and really engaging with these young people, and it exposed me to really the impacts of trauma on top of the training I was receiving. Because of course, if you're going to engage with kids who have experienced trauma and may have some behavioral or social emotional challenges, that they're going to provide you with training to help you prepare you for that. And in the midst of the training, I was learning about our baseline, our normal behavior, how trauma impacts, how behavior is an expression or communication of trauma. And then again, engaging with young people in that field and really getting to talk to them and seeing how it impact their lives. It just took me on this whole journey that I never knew personally was going to align in my life, right? Being in this field or in this understanding or just in this, because for me, it's not even a field. It's not a job. It's not something I do. It's a way of living. And when I talk about trauma, I talk about it from a very human experience. I like to call it human informed.
Right.
That's what it is, because we all on some degree may have experienced trauma or will experience trauma. It's a universal experience.
Right.
So it was something that really helped me. And then as I moved out of Elmcrest and I started working in other fields, I started working at juvenile detention center. I started working at Hillbrook, started engaging with young people there and in getting to know them. And then it was just this whole thing where like, wow, 90% to 95%, if not 100% of young people who are ending up in these detention centers are actually coming from traumatic experiences that have impacted the choices that they made that landed them here. And they were great, amazing young people.
Right.
But we didn't deal them cards, and they didn't have the skills and tools to know how to deal with what they were facing. So it showed in their behavior and in their actions.
Right.
And so it just continued. It opened the door up to me for understanding others, but it also opened the door up to me understanding myself. And then I started working at Coordinated Care Services, Inc. within our organization, and started working with families who were dealing with mental health challenges. and that expand my knowledge even further about
Right.
trauma. And then eventually I started becoming a trainer in the topic, and going into schools and having these conversations. And then, not to mention, my own personal experience that I was diving into on my own personal time to understand trauma on a different level that wasn't just personal, but wasn't just professional, but was personal and relatable to me. So that's kind of, it's like, it's such a long journey that I can probably spend 45 minutes just talking about how I ended up getting
Right.
here and being indulged in this topic. So yeah, that's kind of the trajectory that my life has taken me on and continues to take me on.
Right. Yep. Thank you for sharing that, right? And sharing those experiences with us. But like before we get too far down, because you went all the way through, let's
Yeah,
talk about like some of those early experiences at Elmcrest.
yeah.
Working were you working primarily with children there, or like I mean, not that it matters, but was it primarily
Oh,
children?
yep, it was primarily children from the ages of about 10 to 18 years old, 10 to
Okay, so
17.
let's talk about that a little bit. Like what were you seeing? Okay, so you're fairly new into the field, I'm assuming, right? Like, and you're
Yeah.
coming into this organization that deals with people that have, like, major baggage, whatever, however we label it, whatever, right? But so you're coming into this with your own views and perspectives. How is that experience for you? Like seeing some of these kids, watching these kids struggle through some of this stuff and some of the things they've been through.
Oh man, it was humbling, I think, for sure, and humbling because I think sometimes we look at our own life experiences and we don't realize that other people are struggling and it could always be worse, you know?
Right.
So I think it puts you in a position of humbling yourself. I think for me it's kind of crazy, and it's such a great question that for me, I think I've always been so emotionally compassionate
Mm,
that for me, seeing young people in these positions always brought out the compassion in me, right?
right.
Because I could see like they're struggling with something and it was never personal. It was
Right.
never about me. It was never geared towards me. Even when it was right in my face, it was never personal. So it taught me to continue to walk in that compassion for these young people. But I think it also, for me personally, brought up things within myself, especially if I seen people not treating them with that level of compassion.
Mm,
Like, kind of like, oh, they're doing this to themselves, or they're making these choices without understanding the science or the under I'm trying to think of the best word, but what was going on underneath that behavior? What were
right. The
they really trying
underlying
to
issues.
communicate?
Right.
Exactly. So I was really able to, again, be more compassionate. I think it also exposed me to how much our young people are suffering,
Right. Right.
and right, and we don't really maybe know, or we don't notice the signs and the symptoms and what it looks like when they're struggling. And I think those were some of the key things that it did for me. It was a really, really hard job. I'm going to be 100% transparent. I was compassionate, but there were also times where I was very frustrated, right?
Right.
I worked in a setting there where I was one person with six teenage boys. Like, I'm one, six teenage boys in the house, and I'm running and supporting this whole house, and the way it flows from after school to doing their homework to dinner to snack to recreation. And there were times when, of course, you're talking about six teenage boys who have their own social, emotional
Right.
challenges. You
Right.
know, there's going to be issues. And I didn't always have the skills to know how to engage
Right.
when they were in those spaces. So I think also for me, it was about learning how to communicate
Mm,
effectively, and also be in those moments where I wasn't so overwhelmed, where I was then projecting my own feelings out onto them
right.
without, taking into consideration what they were experiencing and being able to meet them where they were. And that was something that that job really, really taught me, was how to really meet people where they were, who were showing behavior, signs, and symptoms of trauma or social emotional things, and how to really have those conversations with them without me being an escalator and
Right.
someone that's going to get them even more fired up, being someone
Right.
that can actually bring them down and mirror back to them this kind of energy that is calming and supportive and caring, because that's really what they were looking for.
Right.
So it taught me a whole lot on both spectrums.
Right. Okay, so like in that setting, what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced in dealing with people with trauma? Because I mean, I know as a person who has suffered with trauma myself, um, like the emotional dysregulation that occurs frequently, like all of these things. How were you able? I guess what I'm asking is, how were you able to, like you said, kind of like go into yourself somewhat and realize that, like, I don't want to pour more into this, but I want to pour into it, but I want to pour more beneficials into it, you know? So like,
Yeah.
how were you able to like make that transition for someone that had trauma as well?
Uh, so deep, I think self-reflection. I'm always someone who can walk away from, or has been someone who has learned to walk away from situations and reflect on what I could have done better. I think self accountability is huge in those moments. So, okay, this situation happened. We had this argument. He got frustrated. He zoomed out the room. I'm frustrated at the end of the day. Now I'm reflecting on, that didn't exactly go how I wanted to. Let me replay that in my mind. Let me look at where I could have done something differently, right? Where I might have responded in a way that I shouldn't have, and then take what I've learned and put that into action moving forward. So let it be a learning experience. That's for me is how I was able to go within and make those transitions, is by being self-reflective and being able to be someone. When we talk about empathy, empathy is about being able to think about how someone else feels,
Hmm.
right? So me putting myself, like, how would I feel if the shoe was on the other foot? And this
Right.
is how somebody was engaging with me as a young person. What did I need when I was 16, 15, 14 years old, experiencing trauma, and everyone was, brushing it off like it was, me making bad choices, when really it was a communication. What did I need in those moments? And being able to reflect to know it wouldn't be identical, because this young person is not me, but what were the core components or the core characteristics that I was looking for people to bring to me. And that helped me learn how to be able to respond in those really tough situations, and do it from a place of care. And like, it took time. It wasn't, I'm not gonna be like, oh, it was just something I was. It took time. It took real
Right.
reflection. It took me being able to grow. It took education. It took me being able to have tough conversations, like, and go to that young person and be like, hey, I apologize for how I responded to you yesterday. And not
Right.
only does that do something for me, but it teaches them the power of mistakes. Like,
Right.
you can learn from these experiences. You don't have to stay stuck in them. So those were some of the key things that I think I took away, or that I did, that helped me respond in those moments and stay connected and rooted and grounded. And it really all went back to also, like, my own lived experience, like remembering what I needed.
Okay, right. Thank you for that. Thank you. That was really deep, and I appreciate you sharing that, right? Because self-reflection is really, really big. And I think for me personally, that's something that I haven't always done or been able to do, is take a step back and like really assess the situation and say, okay, well maybe, I could go about this a different way. But let's talk about like people dealing with trauma. Let's get into some of that, right? Like as people dealing with traumas, I guess there comes a point, maybe for some and maybe for some, right? Like we come to a point where we begin to realize that like our actions and behaviors, or the way in which we respond to people, isn't really beneficial to us in our life, right? Like, so I guess the question that I would like to ask is, how do people with trauma begin to try to exercise some of those demons? And I know you said self-reflection was is one of those ways in which to begin. Are there any other ways, like that people with trauma can begin to try to work on being better, I guess, is the question I'm asking.
Absolutely. So I think the first key is awareness. We can move from any type of change if we have no education or knowledge around what's taking place in our mind and our body, especially when we're talking about on a personal level. So I think the very first thing would be to, you don't have to become an expert. That's not what I'm saying, but to become knowledgeable on your triggers, awareness of how trauma shows up in your body. Our body is one of our biggest communicators when it comes to how we're feeling in the present moment. So knowing yourself in those kind of communications and what that looks like in your body, so you can be aware of when you're in, because we're not, even if we have like traumatic experiences, we're not always operating in that, right? Sometimes we're being our best selves, and then sometimes something happens that triggers that within us, and now we have this reaction, and we're like, whoa, we didn't even see the transition, we didn't even and see how we got here, but there was definitely something going on within our body that was communicating to us that we were triggered, that we were in a place where we were now getting ready to become escalated. So I think knowledge is key. If you can, look into resources. I love this book by Vander Vessel Burkolk. I'm probably saying this so bad, but it's The Body Keeps the Score. And it really talks about the impact of trauma on the brain and the body, because trauma doesn't just impact the brain, it also impacts the body, which is why the body is one of the communicating factors that actually show you when you're experiencing it. So, education or knowledge, like, look at videos, go on YouTube. There's doctors on YouTube that talk about these topics, and just take time to just really learn and listen and engage with how this actually shows up so you can be able to better respond to it. I think that's would be number one. I think another thing that you can do is find support, whether that's through community resources, whether that's through a trusted, supportive person. Having someone that you can go to that you trust is important, to have these conversations and say, hey, I'm struggling with this. I really need help with this, because trauma also impacts our mental well being, right? So we're talking about mental health issues as well.
Right.
So being able to have resources that you can go to that are based in the community, or hotlines, that you can reach out to, are really important. There's a hotline, NAMI, which is the National Mental Health Institute, or the National, let me get the correct breakdown for NAMI, but it's the National Alliance on Mental Health. They have resources there. You can just go to NAMI and go NAMI Syracuse and find resources on there. You can reach out to 211 and, hey, I'm looking for mental health resources or something, resources connected to trauma, what's in our community. If you're a young person, you can go to, like, the Q Center is something that CCA has, right? So
Yes.
Community Center Alternatives, that you can go to. And I know they have some resources there that help the LGBTQ plus community, but
Right.
there may also be other resources that they may know about that are about young people. There's also the Good Life Foundation, who works directly with young people and helping
Right.
them build skills and can connect them to resources. So knowing the resources that and what's accessible in your community for you, that doesn't necessarily have to do with insurance and you having to figure out all of that, but is a way for you to connect with trusted people who have an understanding or a shared experience, who can help you through some of these experiences and help you build the tools and skills that you need to transcend and transform your experience that you're having in the moment. I think those are our other key things. And like I said, always someone that's just a supportive, someone that can really listen and be there for you, that may not be someone connected to resources or organizations out in the community, but maybe a personal friend or an aunt or an uncle or a grandparent that you can trust. There was a study that was done on trauma back in the 90s. It was the ACEs study, so Adverse Childhood Experience
Hmm.
study, where the Kaiser Permanente, which is a health organization, and the CDC came together and did this small study. And of course, they didn't do the masses of people, so this is just on a group that they studied. But what they learned, that people who had experienced ACEs, and they looked at, like, mental health, those who grew up with a parent who had mental health, those who grew up with a parent who had substance abuse, those who grew up with a parent who might have been abused in the home. They looked at all of these factors, and you were supposed to check if you had these experiences or not. And these were called adverse childhood experiences.
Hmm.
And what they found was people that had more than 3 adverse childhood experiences ended up on a trajectory that impacted their neurodevelopment, because again, trauma impacts the brain, the way you learn, so many things. It impacted their social and emotional skills, the way they engage with others. It ended up leading to them possibly having some type of substance abuse themselves. It ended up leading to disease in the body and illnesses, which ultimately ended up leading to early death. And
Right.
that's what they found with people who have these adverse childhood experiences and then end up growing into a job. That was the trajectory of most of their lives, if there was nothing to interfere and change that trajectory. And one of the things that was most helpful for people was a supportive, caring person.
Hmm.
So we forget about the power of someone being supportive and caring, and how that could literally change the trajectory of someone's life by you just being there, not trying to give them all the advice, not trying to be a guru on trauma, being someone that's literally there as a supportive person to say, hey, I'm here for you. We got this.
Right.
What do you need? Right? It can also be helpful. So I think those are some things that people who are experiencing trauma can really do to kind of continue to move through it. And it's a journey. I think the process of healing is not something that's just, we start here, we finish here. It's a continuum that goes through life that you will have to continue to work on every single day, day in, day out. 40 years later, you'll think I'm good. It's still continuing healing because more and more stuff is just going to come up. It's just a part of our experiences and being human.
Yeah. No, and you're absolutely right about that. Thank you for that, and sharing those resources where people can go and find they can find assistance, because I think everything that you said is on point, right? Like we need people outside of ourselves, and we also have to learn to communicate, right? That's essential in being able to get our needs met, is being able to say the things we mean and mean the things we say. So but definitely it's like so what would you say? Okay, so now we have all of these resources in the community. Let's talk about some day-to-day activities, right? That people may be able to engage in to help them through this process of dealing with some trauma. I know that you're a big advocate on eating healthy, right? Living healthy, meditation, and things like that. So could you give us a little insight into how, like, some small things that we could do day to day to kind of maybe take some time to, I don't know, like take a 5 minute, 10 minute meditation session, right? To bring ourselves back every day or when we wake up or anything along that line, something that people can begin to institute in their day to day life to try to get help, to help themselves.
Yes. I love that question. So before we go into that, the last thing I wanted to say as a resource is therapy. If you have access to therapy, therapy can be huge because that's not only someone that's supportive, but it's also someone you can talk to and really kind of just let your heart out. So I didn't want to forget about therapy. And I know
Absolutely.
that there's a lot of sometimes, with insurance and things like that, there's issues with therapy. Sometimes finding people who look like you, right?
Right.
That might be, but know the resources are out there. So, like, just, be able to do some research. I know they're building a list of Black therapists within Syracuse.
Yes.
So, I will share that resource with you, Chris, if
Yes.
you want to, like, be able to connect it. But I just also wanted to highlight that too.
Definitely. Thank you.
Okay. So, absolutely. So, personal things, and this is like my favorite topic because I feel like we are powerful people and we have the power to change our lives already within us. I
Right.
really do believe that. So, some things that you can do on a personal level, day to day life, and it has to be day to day. This
Right.
isn't something you could just implement once a month because then you're not going to see the impacts, right? Practice. It's like you're not going to see the fruit of a tree in one day. We plant the seed, and that seed needs to be watered to continue to grow to blossom. And it's the
Absolutely.
same thing with your well being. So some of the things I would say that you can invest in is definitely when you wake up, start your day off focused on you. Um, I know we live in a huge time of social media. Don't touch the phone. Don't look at social media. Start your day off with you in mind. Get up. What's my first thing I'm going to do? And write this down. Don't just have it in your brain because then typically that's not going to keep us connected to doing the practice. Write it down. And I'm going to wake up and I would say spend the first 5 minutes grounding yourself. That could be going outside just to breathe in some fresh air and get some natural light. That could be sitting and doing a 5 minute meditation. You can go on YouTube and just look up 5 minute meditation, guided, or just 5 minute meditation with music. And you can just focus on that. And one thing, guided is helpful because it helps guide you through how to meditate. If you do music, a lot of people struggle with that and they think, well, meditation is about quiet in the mind. The mind shouldn't have any thoughts. No, the mind was created to think. The mind is going to think. It's okay if the mind thinks. What you can do is either allow the mind to just wander in those 5 minutes without controlling it, just let it be, right? And you're
Hmm.
going to start working through your own stuff in your mind, or you can use the music as an anchor. And anytime your mind starts to wander, you just gently come back to the music and no, my mind's wandering. That's normal. Let me go back to the music. And then all of your attention goes back to the music. So meditation is about focusing on one thing, just being the observer of that one thing. And that one thing could be anything, even just being the observer of your own thoughts.
Hmm.
So taking 5 minutes to meditate
Yep.
could be huge. 5 minutes to breathe. Breathing is so beneficial, getting oxygen into our bloods, into our cell, our organs, our brain really helps set our day off in the right tone. It helps us move out of any part of our brain that we might be in, such as like flight, fight, or freeze part of our brain, which really takes place in the amygdala part of our brain. If we're practicing breathing, now we're able to access that frontal lobe where like communication takes workplace, language, where we're able to creatively think, where we're able to problem solve, critically think, where we can be calm and connected and self regulate ourselves. So, taking those first 5 minutes to really just breathe will help ground you and prepare you for the present day ahead. Gratitude, I swear, I gratitude. Sit down. This is from a book by Rhonda Barnes called The Magic, where she says she goes through this 28 days of gratitude. But one thing that I took away from that book was sitting down every day and writing 10 things that you're grateful for and
Right.
why you're grateful for it. So I'm grateful for waking up today because it's a new day to be the best person that I can be. And then at the end of that, you're going to say, thank you, thank you, thank you 3 times. So gratitude is huge because if you're grateful, you don't even have time to think about what you don't have. You can only
Right.
focus on what you have, which is
Right.
powerful, right? We spend so much time thinking about the past, or the future, but not being in the present and just being grateful for what we have right now in this moment. So being grateful, you don't even have time to complain. Um, so those would be exercise. I
Mhm.
would say that's another huge one. Exercise, move your body. Moving your body moves stagnant energy out of your body. Moving your body moves literal toxins out of your organs, out of your blood, out of your lymphatic system. So you have to move your body.
Mhm.
Again, people think moving your body, oh, we got to work out an hour a day. Go for a walk for 10 minutes, right?
Right.
Do yoga for 10 minutes, stretch for 10 minutes, jog, find a 10-minute video on YouTube. I know YouTube is like my best friend. I find everything on there. I'm trying to tell you,
Yeah.
like, search.
Yeah.
You don't need a trainer. It's a trainer on YouTube,
Right.
so you want to use that as a huge resource to help you stay committed to that. And again, 10 minutes a day of moving your body is huge. Not even to mention the mental health impacts that it has on you when you stay committed to physically working out, and moving your body, because again, you're pushing toxins out of your body, not just on a physical level, but on an energetic level as well.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. I mean, that was a bit, because I wrote a few of them down because obviously, well, not obviously, but I'm trying to work on being better as a human every day, right? Like that's one of my personal goals. So I kind of want to bring it to a wrap, and I appreciate everything that you just shared with us, and I would love to be able to get an opportunity to sit down with you again because I feel like there's so much that we really couldn't put in or get into right today. But thank you for your time. I'm appreciative of your time. I know it took a bit for me to get with you, but thank you for sharing so much today. And if there's anything else you'd like to share on real quick or give a shout out.
No, I think this is awesome. So I just want to say thank you to Leap Lifestyle and to you, Chris, for doing this. I think it's important to have these conversations,
Absolutely.
to talk about stuff like this within our community, because who else is gonna help us if not each other, right?
Right.
So absolutely love this. I am happy to be here to have been a part of this conversation. I would be more than happy to come back because as you can see, I can I can
Yeah.
talk.
Nah, for sure. That's good though.
I
That's
can
good.
dive into a lot of stuff, that I've just learned over the experience that doesn't even come from just professional, but just from my own personal development.
Experience
And I just want to end by saying the power lies in each of us.
each of us.
So to remember that we are powerful people and we have the power to change our lives, to better our lives, to be better every single day if we choose to put in the work and the action to do so. And it is not an easy journey. That's not what I'm saying, but it is definitely, definitely worth it.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that, Monica. And this has been Christopher White on the Leap Lifestyle Podcast. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in, and hopefully I hear from you all soon. Have an amazing day, and remember, you're great. Peace.
Thank you.